So I will introduce Chief Weiss. This normally would have been in a business meeting. He's making the rounds to different city councils virtually. He usually does the state of the district at this time, but it has kind of morphed into COVID, what's going on at TVFNR in terms of COVID and how the fire district's responding to that. I felt, because we're broadcasting these publicly on YouTube, that this would be a good venue to allow him to come talk to council directly, and then you may have some questions. He had told me maybe 10, 15 minutes max, unless you have lots of questions for him. A couple of his staff are on, but I will let Chief Weiss introduce who else is on the call. So the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. And obviously right off the bat, thank you for giving me some time to talk about the district and COVID-19. I know normally this time of year, you're probably expecting a beautiful PowerPoint presentation with lots of data that explains what our operations are. But I can tell you there's very little data that goes into how TVFR is operating right now. And with me listening in, of course, is Chief Alan Kennedy and Chief Cassandra Olvin, who are part of our government's affairs team, and hopefully you are familiar with. They're just checking up on me, I assure you. I will say right off the bat, we've had 3 virtual meetings here at TVFR, 2 board meetings and 1 budget committee meeting. And you all are just the same. When I do our meetings, it's the same. It's less and less like a Saturday Night Live skit. And it's more and more we're actually figuring this out, this new way of life, if you will, and doing business. Whether it's Teams, WebEx, Zoom, we can name them all to give them equal time, but they all have their idiosyncrasies, and we're getting used to them. So thank you, City of Sherwood and the leadership, for taking care of your community, your residents that you serve. We appreciate that. We thank you for allowing us to be a part of that with you and allowing our teams to work together on various projects. Like your city and our other city and county partners, everybody's really focused on logistics and operations and communications, all related to the pandemic, which is why I'm gonna run through some bullet points, kind of where TVFR is at. You can stop me at any time with a question, or at the end, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I don't know for sure if you do this, but a lot of places they've had task forces, COVID task forces, and our task force has been in place since early March. So we fired one up right away. Ably staffed by Assistant Chief Kenny Fuentes, and a phenomenal team that has worked tirelessly to get us up to where we needed to be with PPE and operations so that we can continue to respond in a safe manner to the community. We've equipped, trained, and constantly communicated with our front line, created COVID-19 protocols, COVID-19 policies, and different things like that we never thought that we would have to do. Perhaps like you, we found that communication organizationally wide has increased, and this Zoom platform, Teams platform, we always intended as an organization to streamline our communications because, as you know, we cover such a vast geography, it's hard to get out and communicate with everybody. So we already budgeted for and purchased what we call D10 TVs, which are large 55-inch screens that are on the platform of Zoom primarily, and we shipped them out to every operating center and every station. And we can have meetings just like this with the entire organization. So if you think about that, roughly 180 on-duty personnel plus staff all at one time, we can communicate. So while connectivity probably isn't as good as it used to be, communication certainly is. We can work on connectivity later and those in-person meetings and relationships down the road. But for now, I can tell you in my 26 years, we have never had this kind of communication from top to bottom. I have a meeting in the morning with our battalion chiefs, and by 10 o'clock in the morning, I visit with a station, and they are on the same page with what we talked about in the morning. So that level of communication, hopefully something we can take away from this pandemic. So we're disinfecting, oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah.
So do you anticipate being able to utilize virtual meetings more often just to save the travel time and do that strategically post-pandemic?
We do. We actually do. And I'll mention it now, and hopefully I don't repeat myself, but we actually created a task force too. I like lots of task forces. So we had Task Force 1. I had to come up with Task Force 2. Task Force 2, their specific role is to think about what are we doing now and what can transition into the future. Now, a lot of what they're doing actually is how do we get back to business as usual? How do we open up operating centers? How do we open up station community rooms? How do we train? That's a big portion of what they're doing, but another huge part of it, district-wide, what's working in every division. And there's representation on Task Force 2 from every division in the organization, and they're providing input that's going to guide how we use this. But definitely in some way, shape, or form, we will be using virtual meetings. There is no question I can visit with 5 stations in virtual meetings. I'm lucky if I can do 2 in a day if I drive there. It's just, it takes time. There's the personal interaction, telling stories, if you will, and then getting down to business, and then another long drive. So for me, while it's not as personal, there are huge benefits to having this virtual meeting. So yes, some way, shape, or form, it will be. And then, to take that a step further, what does it mean for telecommuting, teleworking? I think there's a lot of organizations that are having that conversation around, should we be doing it differently? Can we be doing it differently? And in what areas of your business or organization? So I think it's interesting things if you step back and look at the pandemic, what we've learned, what we can implement. To me, it's fascinating, and maybe that makes me a bit odd, but it truly is just fascinating. And there are silver linings in this, and I'm finding silver linings. So we'll continue to do that. As I started to mention, we're disinfecting our rigs as best we can. We had a rotation where we source it out to a partner agency to help clean some of our transport units, which when you have an extended period of time in a transport, fire rescue medic, there's more exposure potential. So we want those disinfected. We have been doing that on a regular basis. There's some less expensive means to clean equipment, stations, and apparatus, and we're looking into those right now. We're finding that some of the materials that we need for that are more easily sourced than, say, a bleach or a disinfectant. So we're trying new ways to do the same thing, which is disinfect and make sure our people are safe. We have tested 30 personnel. I apologize, I don't know how many people that the city of Sherwood has tested, but we've tested 30 personnel, 1 person positive. And I am happy to report that person returned to work yesterday. And they had a difficult time because there are those people out there where they get COVID, they maybe test negative. We always do 2, and then the second one was positive, and then there'd be a negative and a positive. So this individual has been off the line for a fair amount of time, asymptomatic, and now finally able to return to work. Super excited to be back to work. Not that they weren't happy with their family, but certainly happy to be back to work and help as we move forward. PPE is always a hot topic for first responders. I get asked that question a lot. I will tell you that early on, these battles are won and lost by logistics. And we had logistics personnel, we had line personnel, we had staff personnel, everybody sourcing, trying to find PPE. Of course, we had donations from communities, which was fantastic. I don't think we do that as much anymore. But what we learned early on was that this is not sustainable. Everybody around the country is trying to find PPE. We need to find things we can reuse. We need to find things that we can decontaminate. And so we quickly moved to suits, if you will, and masks that we can use over and over again. And as we get into the summer months, that will be somewhat problematic in terms of the heat. Anybody that's had to put on a level B suit knows that they can get quite warm. And we recognize that. So there are ways that we can alleviate some of the burden and the stress, heat-related stress on individuals, rotate personnel, 1 person in, and changing of PPE. And our hope is that our lighter weight, more breathable PPE is going to get us into the months when it's cooler again, or if we're lucky, definitive therapeutic care, vaccination, something to that effect. But we can't count on that. Like you, these are unknowns. We can't forecast the future. So we're just going to continue having the reusable and keeping it available for crews if they need it. One thing I will say is it's a different looking animal that we have on the road. It's people in white suits and in silver suits and in face masks, and they talk with amplifiers. So they sound, I guess like aliens is what I've heard. We've done a lot of, social media, but I still hear about things like, oh, well, it was hard to communicate with them and it wasn't as personal. And all I can tell you is I am so sorry to the citizens of Sherwood and the rest of the communities we serve, but we have to protect the first responders so that they can move from your call to the second, the third, and the fourth call. And so our highest priority, my highest priority is we will maintain that level of PPE until we have some sort of assurance that our firefighters and paramedics are safe. So the biggest complaint I heard was they smell like bleach when they show up. And that's what we use to decon, the suits. And I suspect there are some personnel out there that a little's good, a lot's better. So you might get a higher level of that bleach smell. But in the end, it's all about the safety of our personnel. So we've tried to do some education and some social media about that. Hopefully people are getting the message. At this point, I'll apologize if you saw me doing public service announcements too many times. Our fantastic government affairs division under Chief Kennedy and Chief Olvin, they found a really good public service announcement. They got me in it, and it was a great message. It was the right time. Yeah, it was a lot, but I'm glad we did it, and I'd happy to do it again the next time. I mentioned earlier we did stand up Task Force 2, and I mentioned a little bit about what Task Force 2 is doing. They will be looking a lot at the transitioning back to business, the new normal, if you will. And then we're staying in constant communication with our public agency partners, all of them. Of course, we're in 4 counties essentially, so we are in constant contact. We have 2 fantastic medical advisors that help us stay ahead of the curve and make sure that our employees are protected. I can't say enough good things about having that kind of guidance and direction that this organization has. So hats off to Dr. Burke and Dr. Daya for sure. You'll know that our facilities are closed. I am not sure if yours are open. I think yours are closed as well. We are going to continue to stay closed and limit public access. I see counties and I see cities opening. And I shared this with the city manager at the city manager's meeting last week, that it gives me a great amount of fear to see these places open. And it's because we have to be reactive as a first responding agency. And so if people go out and they find this one park that's open, this one trail that's open, this one pub that's open, and they congregate, my fear is asymptomatic people commingling with people that don't have the virus, and then the threat of spread. And I know that we have to open at some point. It's a fear for me because it could indicate an increase in call volume. It could indicate an increase in PPE use. It could create an increase in hospital space. So again, yet to be seen, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but I do have some fears to see what it is, how it is going to impact our organization moving into the coming months. So most of our community events have been canceled. It's our great outreach. We are a great community partner. We love being out there. I hate the fact that we don't have our community rooms open. I hate the fact that we can't go to schools and work with the kids. It's how I started in the fire service, was working with middle schools. We can't do that. We're finding other ways. So you may see a fire engine drive through a neighborhood with their lights on, maybe waving out the window because someone is having a birthday. Or somebody's having a graduation, or we drive by a hospital to recognize those first responders and public health workers for the job that they're doing in these times. So we're trying to get out there in different ways, and hopefully the community see us and they appreciate that we're trying to get out there. We will eventually get back to what we were doing before, and I can't wait for those days for sure. We too have a lot of people that are working from home, so non-essential, non-response personnel. There are quite a few that work from home and telecommute. We will be getting to a point where we are able to rotate staff into the buildings. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what kinds of tape we put on the ground or which stairs are up and which stairs are down, but we have to start considering those things because they're an integral part of our operations. Up to this point, everybody wants to contribute to the team. I have one amazing organization all of the periphery stuff is to the side. We are focused on one thing, and that is response and the health of our firefighters and paramedics. And it's amazing to watch us all work together towards that goal. It's been an interesting ride my first 10 months, and I don't know what the future has in store for me, but this has definitely been something that I will look back on fondly in terms of how the organization responded. I noticed that there was a lot of stress on our personnel, day staff and line personnel. We provided peer support training, behavioral health training, and then I realized that there's another stress at home, and it's the families of our firefighters and our paramedics. And so we stood up a website. Of course, the two chiefs that are on this call helped me do this, but we stood up a website specific to family members of our first responders. And so we provided a postcard that went out to every employee of Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue with, I think they call it a QRT code or QR code on it. And family members are able to scan that and come up to our website where there's information on behavioral health, mental health, physical health, what we're doing for their loved ones to keep them safe at work so that they can go home and be well at home. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the organization for not only being safe at work, but being safe at home, because I think the risk at home is far more than it is at work. We have incredible PPE that protects them, but at home, it's a different environment without that same level. So we stood up the website, had a tremendous amount of family and friends hit on that, and I think it was a good service to our extended family, if you will. Last couple things I have for you is that we are kind of following suit with our partners, ODF, State Fire Marshal's Office, counties, and asking people not to burn outside. It's slightly off topic from COVID-19, but related in the fact that we don't want to add to anything that might make compromised community members suffer more in this time, or it's at risk, if you will, asthmas and other conditions where we just don't want to add to that. So we're not mandating, but we're asking people not to burn outside and follow the guidance by DEQ and the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office. So the last thing is we will continue to send updates to the city manager that are hopefully getting around to you as well. It tells you a weekly update of what we're doing, what we're involved with, and what we're looking forward to, besides the end of COVID, of course. So with that, thank you again for your time. I would be more than happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thanks, Chief. You answered mine and then some, which I greatly appreciate. Council members, any questions, or staff questions, Chief?
I have a question. So I guess, Chief, you had to cancel Community Academy. So Tim and I went through in April of last year, and we had a great time. But are you guys planning on having it again in October when you have it in the fall?
So I'm going to go ahead and let Chief Cassandra Olvin answer the question, but I will tell you this: they will not go away.
Yeah.
It's a win, right? It's when, and when can we do that? And I tell you what, as much as COVID itself changed over these past couple of months, what does it mean moving into the future? We are going to get there, though, Council. We will get there. It's extremely valuable to the people that participate. It's extremely valuable to us. I built a friendship with Councilor Rosner now, and we went through the police academy as well, which was fantastic. So, the Sherwood Police Academy, sorry.
Yep.
So, yeah, they will stick around. Cassandra, if you had anything to add to that, please jump in if you can.
Chief White, this is Chief Kennedy. You okay?
Couldn't hear that.
This is Chief Kennedy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, a little broken.
Okay. Unfortunately, Cassandra was unable to attend today because of her daughter's graduation. However, we are looking at, can we host a October Community Academy? But again, we'd have to play the game, what's happening within the state, and we'll just go from there. And we'll decide early enough, and we'll go through the cities and see who they have that's interested in joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chief, when you said no burning, are you talking about no fire pits, that kind of a thing?
No, we don't. I mean, that's discretionary, and we don't influence those. It's more of the backyard burn, which typically falls outside of your city limits anyhow. It's any kind of those burns that are just burning the rubbish, burning the scraps, burning the limbs, burning those kinds of things. We're just encouraging people not to do it. And again, we haven't banned anything. There was a ban in Clackamas County for a short period of time. We discussed it in Washington County, but we didn't quite get to that point. We came close with a couple early burns, and we're preparing for wildland season already. So no, we haven't done anything yet. It's just, it was an ask. And we use social media and some of our sites to actually message that out. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I have a question, or actually, I think two questions. Have you seen any kind of rise in like cardiac deaths or anything like that, like New York saw, because people were ignoring symptoms and not going to the hospital when for fear of getting infected?
Right. So we're keenly watching that. Our medical director, Dr. Daya, he has been instrumental in things like pulse point and some of the changes in our protocol for how many responders we have go to a cardiac event. For our first responders that can respond to pulse point cardiac events in your home, we have turned off the portion of pulse point that was community driven for fears early on. But this week, we're going to have the conversation about turning that back on. Now, to your question specifically, we haven't noticed it locally, but it is that conversation, that question is driving changes that we're making and re-engaging and implementing things like pulse point. But I know in Clackamas County, they were going to make changes in their response, and they chose not to for that very reason, is we don't want to adversely impact responses to cardiac arrest. So I'm not seeing that. I am seeing a slight uptick in call volume, and that's based on a fairly substantial lull that we had. It was flat. I don't think it was like way down in call volume, but it was fairly flat. Our concern was people would stay home and stay home too long and get more sick. We haven't seen that yet. Now, coming out of more openings and the city's opening, people getting out more, are they going to be more inclined to get out, seek help, or are they going to stay home? Are they getting sicker? We're looking at all that stuff, but directly to your question, we're not seeing that level of rise. And when I say we're not watching the data, it's not true. With that regard, EMS world, we're watching the data, and we're gonna keep tabs on that. If we have to make changes, we will. Yep.
Awesome, thank you. And then my other, maybe it's not a question, but more an observation, something to watch. And I talked to Christina Lent about this last week, but one of my mother's in a nursing home at Friendsview Manor down in Newark, and she's on a committee that's helping deal with communications around health issues and stuff, within that organization. But one of the things they're running into is when they have first responders coming in, they're coming up to the building, they're calling the individual, asking them if they can come down. Now, this isn't specifically, I'm talking about independent living side as opposed to the nursing home and the assisted living side of those facilities. But they're working through some issues with that and communicating with their members about how that works and stuff. But what I'm noticing is that that independent living for seniors is kind of a hybrid between what you and I would call true independent living, in our homes or an apartment, and assisted living. And they seem to be struggling a little bit with how to deal with those 911 calls. But I think it's something you guys might want to take a close look at in terms of your policies. I think your policy right now is you're treating them like apartment buildings, and might be something you want to take a look at just because of the unique nature of that, because some of those folks are pretty frail, and even though they're in the independent living facility, and the challenge, and I've actually stepped in to help them on several issues, but the facilities are treating them like apartments, right? Yet they're still need kind of extra help, so just kind of, it's not really a question, but just an observation. Christina was great in getting me information back, by the way. She was awesome. But take a close look at that, because as we move forward and we work hard on protecting the most vulnerable portions of our community as we reopen, I think that's an area where there's some risk out there.
And that specific to your situation, what you were talking about, I'm well aware of that one, actually. And you're right. to a point. What we tried to do through dispatch and policy, and this is just COVID, is we're trying to get people to come to the door. We're trying to get them to take a step outside. And your example is absolutely correct. It's a lower level of care for them, but there's still needs that these community members have. But it doesn't necessarily differentiate the location and what's in there for us on our end. So they're doing the same procedure. They're making the phone call and maybe not even realizing where they're calling, right?
Right.
The good news is that access is never a problem. We always know how to get into these places, whether it's independent living or assisted living. We have codes and numbers and those kinds of things to get in. So we haven't had an issue there. But it's that right now, that COVID piece where we're trying to get people to come out and it doesn't work for everyone. In the end, we will go in and we will go to that particular room, however it's addressed or numbered, and we'll handle it. But yes, we are aware of that, and that's in the EMS queue as well.
Awesome. And Christina was great, and I was able to help them do better education for their that live there and how to deal with this. And by the way, it's a conversation I had with Washington County in terms of testing and resources that they're putting out there too. I just don't want that group to fall through the cracks, as we go through.
I completely agree. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate you taking the time and
Thank you.
All the hard work that you and your team do. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the time. I hope to see you in person soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're moving on to the next item on our work session, which is a review of city council goals. Joe.
So we were going to do this session. Why am I getting?
I'm Bruce.
Shouldn't be.
Another meeting. If everybody try to mute except Joe.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. So we were going to do this a couple weeks ago, and we went long on a work session, so I just shifted it to tonight. Normally, we always pass a resolution where the council adopts the goals for the year. We haven't done that yet. I wanted just to loop back with everybody to review the document that I resent out yesterday, just to make sure there's no outstanding questions, so the council goals can be acted on very smoothly. So that's really the purpose of this, is to review the document that I sent out, which is would be an attachment listed as Exhibit A. It would be an attachment to the resolution, which is what we've done in years past. So kind of just want to open up for any questions or comments or concerns, if any.
I would just have one comment in that, obviously we set all these goals prior to the current situation. And, that obviously we're spending time, energy, staff resources, effort on other things that we weren't planning on doing. I don't know that we need to go through and completely revamp our goals, but just maybe something for all of us to keep in mind is that, it's unlikely we're going to be able to accomplish the same amount of work that we were planning to accomplish when we all agreed to these. And I think we just all need to kind of keep that in mind as we get to the end of the year or reset, mid-year or something like that.
I guess my initial response to that is we are continuing to push on all of these as much as possible. I think obviously COVID got in the way, but as things settle down and we get back to somewhat norm, I think we can ramp up some of our efforts as staff to keep pushing these forward and to get these accomplished. So
I totally appreciate you saying that, Joe, and I think that's absolutely the right approach to take. And so I'm glad to hear you saying that you're not letting up and figuring you've got an excuse, in the back pocket, which would be the wrong approach to take. And I fully trust that you and the staff are pressing forward, as much, with as much effort as possible. That's a call out to me, is I think that we have to be cognizant of as we get through the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Doug, too. I have, in just glancing over, only 2 points that I wanted to bring up. One, I think, is fairly simple. On Council Goal 1, Economic Development, we've submitted to Metro for the grant application to update Sherwood West. We got a word back yet?
Hey, Julia, you're on the call. Yeah. Do you have an update?
I don't have an update. We did submit that. They extended their deadline because of COVID, so it wasn't due until the end of April. In talking with them, they were talking about separating basically the UGB expansion area processes, because it's less competitive and fairly straightforward, from the more competitive where you had to do an interview. And I haven't heard anything back from them. So I think that we will get reviewed in a much simpler and quicker manner, but I honestly need to check back in with Metro and see where they're at with that.
And can we do that sooner rather than later?
Yep.
I haven't heard anything really from Metro during the stuff, so.
Yeah, no, and they're dealing with COVID as well, obviously, and I know that the staff person, and they're dealing with telecommuting, and it's a little bit less flexible than what we have, where they have to get permission and be escorted into the building in certain situations. So they might be struggling a little bit more organizationally, but I will check in and find out about that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. And my other one, and then let other folks weigh in on things they want to ask questions or comment on. Council Goal 4, Project 2B, Safe Routes to School, page 2, the ODOT competitive infrastructure grants are for Title I schools. The only Title I school is SMS, the soon-to-be SMS, right? Hawksview Elementary, right?
Yes, I believe so.
We'd have to confirm that, but I believe that's the case.
So should we, while Archer Glen is interested, if we're not eligible to get any competitive grants for Archer, I think we should look at if there's any needs for the
Hawksview
parameter of Hawksview.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I think it's different efforts and different buckets. So Archer is interested in sort of that education, outreach, encouragement thing, so you could still do stuff with that. But yeah, you're right that the infrastructure component wouldn't be eligible at Archer Glen.
I have no knowledge of what the boundary is of the new boundary of that. I haven't paid any attention because I don't have children in there. So
is it confirmed there's a Title I requirement? There was some talk a while back that for this next round they weren't going to have that requirement.
I honestly do not know. It was a requirement of the last round, and we did hear that it might not be. I think it will still be a like a factor, so Title I schools will likely be more competitive, even if it does open it up for others. But I honestly don't know at this point. I think everything slowed down a little bit, so I'm not even sure if they've released that information yet. But we'll look into that too.
Well, with budget, with the governor asking for 17% reductions by department, it's going to be tougher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my short list. Other comments from other folks?
So I have a comment. I would hope that I know the COVID thing has kind of disrupted this whole process, but I would hope that maybe we schedule a time, 3 months from now, when we get an update on where we are on some of these goals. The white paper, the user guide 101. I mean, just some of these things that are listed. I just kind of want to know kind of what's happening, where those are, and if things get accomplished and department heads, whomever wants to, update us prior, awesome. If not, I'd like to schedule something so we have another short work sessions. We are up to date on that stuff.
Yeah, I think we should do that. More communication about where we are is lesson learned from last year when it comes to this stuff. So,
yeah. And just if I could piggyback on that, because that was one of my things, I agree 100%. And Joe, we've talked about this many times.
yeah,
Even coming up with just a monthly, very simple report that you can just send out to us on where we're at on stuff. On schedule, delay, whatever it is. That also addresses the concern that Doug brought up around what are we really going to be able to accomplish this year with all the COVID stuff going on? Because if we're all seeing that something's delayed and we got a good reason, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
We don't want the surprises,
Correct.
before we have a chance to intervene on your behalf, like maybe do a supplemental budget and give you extra money, whatever that might be, give us a chance to help you out.
correct.
So, Joe, I have a question. Let's see, I guess it's pages 3 through 17. Is that how you were are those what we would be evaluating as when we do your performance evaluation?
That would be part of it.
Okay. Is there a separate document that will go into that, or is this what we'll be working from?
I would work from this document.
Okay.
Because these are your goals and with some specific projects that you want to see accomplished. And I think that's what you hold me and my team accountable for.
So, Joe, the budget, I know we can't talk in too much detail about the budget, but the budget that you submitted that was handed out, does it cover all of this?
Yes.
Or there's no unfunded items in this, unfunded projects in this document?
I'm just quickly skimming, and I don't believe so, no.
Okay, well,
I use this as, even though you haven't formally adopted them, I'm considering them adopted in a clear direction and base my on these goals, among other things.
Okay. And I'm sure that you have some supporting document that kind of talks about what the cost is for each of these if we need to start talking about them in the budget cycle or in the budget process.
Yes.
Good.
And a number of these don't really have significant budget impacts. It's using existing resources and just making things a priority. So.
Other comments, questions?
This is 1,000% better than what we've done in the past. So,
yeah,
very happy with that.
Obviously disappointed with all this COVID stuff because we were gaining momentum and then these got kind of sidetracked and now we're coming back to it. So
it looks really good.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay.
And hey, Joe, one just really detailed question. I just noticed this. You have a start date on these, and then in the time frame you say 3 to 6 months. Is that from that's from the start date, correct?
I think it's from where we are now, basically. So some of these were all updated by the various project managers. So I think it's more now.
Some, one is fall of this year. Others were February. So others are immediate. So I think it's all pretty clear.
Yeah, and the only thing I would suggest then is just adding a completion date, knowing that it can change as you do updates. So it's just really, because it's kind of a little vague right now. And I think, for myself, I'm most interested in when is it going to get done and do I need to help you get there?
There are end dates. There are proposed end dates.
Yeah.
On most of them.
Some of them. Like I'm looking at
the ongoing ones.
Like, it's like council goal for public safety on page, in that page number, begin training program 3 to 6 months. So there's having an end date, I think would be helpful, knowing that you're going to update it as things change and we move forward.
And can we agree that end date means a month, an end month? I don't want to see April 19th in here and hold anybody accountable to that. If it says
Right.
April, that's what I'm looking for.
As long as it has the time of day in that month.
5 p.m.
All right.
No, that sounds great.
All right, we're getting rummy. Anything else? We'll adjourn this work session. Anything else, Joe?
No, does anyone have any questions on anything COVID related or that I can
So-
update you?
COVID related. I don't know how many, Joe and I have chatted. I don't know how many folks you've chatted with. The notion of opening dog park and skate park. What day do we plan on doing that?
So it's the dog park and the tennis courts.
And it's
Sorry.
pork.
Right. Sorry.
That's
skate park.
okay. So
Hope so.
I haven't chatted and gotten an update from Kristen. She was talking to a bunch of parks folks today about those. What are the best practices for those two type of uses? I did hear from the school district they want to open Laurel Ridge and SMS tennis courts at the same time with us, and we're going to coordinate what the rules are for both facilities. I'm hoping by Friday that we'll announce opening.
I think in the rules there has to be something about being allowed to kick balls but not touch balls.
Yes.
Yeah,
If
I
you've seen the
posted a
famous
link.
video that's out there.
Gosh, okay.
Sorry, I couldn't.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yes. You can touch your own balls, but you can't touch other people's balls.
Here, here.
So Mr. Mayor, by Friday is my goal.
Excellent. And we'll do the whole, let everybody know about it before the weekend.
Yes.
The meeting with Old Town businesses on new plan for phase one, where's that at?
So we just had a meeting, 4:00 today that went to about 5:15. Bruce is in the room. I think things are going well. We're just working out details. May 29th is the target date to close the streets, to close Railroad Street. They're not ready until June 1st. So even if the governor opens things up, there's some things they want to get ready to open. So June 1st is kind of their target to open into the streets. So
Is it the entire street, Joe?
we will close the entire Railroad Street. And we're working on deliveries, and we got to work with Rainbow Market and how do they get deliveries and things like that in the back. So there's just a lot of details we're still sorting through, but we had a good meeting today.
That's great news.
And we'll probably announce it by Friday publicly that we're going to be doing this. So
Tomorrow, one of the business owners is going to go around and get the petitions signed, or I'm not sure if it's really a petition, but get the signatures of the business owners for notification. So we definitely don't want to announce it more publicly than that until those businesses have been notified. And we're in the process of getting the special event permit application filled out and put together.
Will there be a different route for the TriMet bus, or what will that look like?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Julia,
Thank you,
do you-
guys.
I think this is
Talk
great.
about that at all, or not
really
really?
support this.
I'm sorry, Joe, what was your question?
I sent out the proposed route to a couple of council members. I can send it to everybody. TriMet hasn't approved it yet, but I think it's actually a better route than what we currently have.
I agree.
It might end up being a better route permanently.
Unlikely to be worse.
It's better on the turns, which is what's going to be important for the drivers.
Correct.
I mean, if I was to design a different route, I'd do something even bolder and different. But on a first stab at it, I think that's good.
Yeah.
And kudos to the team on engaging Old Town like that. It's going to be important for them, and hopefully other businesses that are going to be limited under phase one can get creative in their areas as well.
Correct.
Well, kudos to the teams across the board. I think that it's been amazing watching the whole city respond to this, from the street issue to getting ahead of all of our maintenance projects. I could go on and on. I think the city has just done a wonderful job responding. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are keying up projects to make sure our buildings are COVID safe using federal money.
Yes.
And you'll hear more about that.
Mayor Mays knows about this because we talk daily, but we're modifying all of the bathrooms and all of our facilities to put in the automatic, instead of touching the handles to turn the water on, we're putting in all the automated one that you just, so there's no touch. Doing the same thing with the toilets, the no touch for the paper dispensers in our facilities. We're doing that in all of our facilities, including the YMCA.
And where is this federal funding coming from?
CARES.
The CARES grant, 104 million that went to the county.
Yep, we're finally getting some of the
Are we
city.
finally getting our share?
Well, we're definitely getting some. We'll see. They publicly said last Friday, 50 million to cities for eligible expenses.
50 or 15?
50.
50. Okay.
So they haven't figured out exactly the process, but the good news that I've heard from the county as opposed to the state is they're following the federal guidelines. And these kind of expenses to make your facilities better and safer for the public are all eligible expenses.
And if I understand,
Is that it has to be strictly much more narrow for public health related type expenses. So
I know the governor said that, but in the federal guidance though we could get reimbursed for our grant program that we did?
correct.
And our utility relief program.
Correct.
In Washington County, even though the governor tried to narrow it, they did not adopt that same narrow scope, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then we applied to the Oregon Business
Oregon's program.
to match what we already spent on our businesses. So maybe we can do another grant.
Yeah, so Bruce threw together quickly an application in to Business Oregon. They have money now that matches, and if we're successful, we'd get another 200,000 basically to utilize for businesses.
Nice.
So we'll see.
I mean, just on the straight population numbers, we would get 1.7 million of that $50 million. I doubt we're going to get that, but it does raise the question or the thoughts that what else can we be doing? Are there other programs that we could be putting in place? Other projects, in the parks, like sanitation dispensers at this skate park, stuff like that.
Yep.
We should probably do some heavy brainstorming so when the application form's ready, we've got a laundry list and can get our fair share.
Yeah. Send all ideas to Joe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because Mayor Mays has been preaching that from that book for weeks with me, and he came up with some stuff that we didn't quite honestly think about. So any ideas you have, there's no bad ideas here. Just share them, and we'll look into it. So.
I mean, I see a burning need to rehab the whole HVAC system in City Hall, so it's COVID safe.
with HEPA filters.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
And clone that to other buildings. So anyways, there's lots of good ideas. The governor, you probably saw the email that I forwarded the county and the PSA or whatever the county is going to submit by Friday for phase 1. Clackamas County submitted today for phase 1. My understanding, both applications will ask for June 1 to start. Between Joe and I, we're going to draft a letter to ask the governor not to wait those 10 days. And I think other cities are going to do the same. And I think strong likelihood the chambers of our county will do the same. Because there's, per the governor guidelines, our county meets every test, and they did last week. So why wait why have those businesses that could open under phase one, what make them wait another 10 days? I don't understand. So, any
Some
thoughts?
sort of retroactive 10 days look back or something.
Who was that?
Sorry, my son is getting a little excited on his Xbox game right now.
Awesome.
That's appropriate. Yeah.
Those are better words than I hear my son sometimes.
I expect the cities of Clackamas County, especially the ones that are not in Metro, will all be on this bandwagon, and including some that are in Metro, to push, to push for 522, not 61.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments for Joe on anything COVID related? All right, we will end our work session and everyone log out, and you can log back in for an exec session. And have a good evening, because I'm out of here.